Hello, everyone. This is Otto Lee again, and today I'm very honored to have a very special guest, our good friend Rusty Hicks, who is the current chair of the Democratic Party of the state of California. He was most recently elected to be the new chair of the party. And also, I want to share something interesting is that we actually both shared a bit of a heritage. We have both actually served in the United States Navy Reserve, and at the same time, we've both been caught up to serve in the desert, as we call desert sailors, meaning that we actually were in Kuwait, and in his case, he was in Afghanistan, right? And I was in Iraq. And we could talk a little bit about some of our experiences as well. But in the meantime, we also talk about some of the good work he's doing for the Democratic Party and try to get people to vote this important election in November. Good morning, Rusty. How are you today?
It's great. I'm doing well. It's great to be with you.
Good. Thank you for joining us and taking your valuable time today to talk with us and our audience. So Rusty, so as I mentioned earlier, you have also served in the Navy and been caught up, and I'm sure you have a lot of very interesting experiences to share. One thing I want to check in with you is I think there's been a bit of a misunderstanding, a misnomer. Some folks thinking that the party, the Republican Party, tends to be more patriotic with the defense and military. And I just want to share what you feel about that thinking, and how we could maybe help people understand that patriotism is not really based on any party at all.
Well, I think it's many times a different view
Mhm.
of what patriotism really is. For some, patriotism is, in many ways, sort of blind allegiance to a flag or to a slogan or to a cause. We as Democrats, I think, see patriotism as being one who is willing to question our
Mhm.
country in order to make our country better.
Mhm.
And I had a very interesting conversation with my grandfather, who's 82 years old,
Mhm.
when Kaepernick first took the knee
Right,
around the national anthem, and
right.
he was offended, um, and said, you deployed to a war zone to support that flag and support the national anthem. And I said, Papa, that's what I call him, Papa. That's not actually what I went for. I went to do my duty, to make our country, for the idea that our country could be better. And so I believe that I put on a uniform and served in order to give Colin Kaepernick the right to take a knee, to call out an injustice that, if corrected, would actually make that anthem, that flag, that idea more meaningful and real. And so, my grandfather is always amazes me at his ability to move,
Mhm.
to understand,
Mhm.
and to take a different path.
Right.
And so I've been really proud to have conversations with him and others to talk about what we as Democrats believe is the true meaning of patriotism.
That's a great way of explaining what this really meant. As we know, Colin Kaepernick, our former 49er quarterback, who right now for 4 years have not been able to play footballs because I think he's kind of like blackballed by the NFL due to his very courageous act and very selfless in that sense that he certainly has a very comfortable life as a quarterback, making many millions of dollars to take this very brave move, which was is still very controversial, but I think more and more people recently has finally truly understand what he meant. That Black Lives Matter, that the lives of so many Black people in our country, the systemic racism is still well in the life, and what he was able to bring to people's attention. I'm so glad that the NFL, Johnny come lately, a little bit late, but better late than never, has come out with the Commissioner Goodell himself explaining the reason and supporting the work of Kaepernick. And I also do see more people wearing the Colin Kaepernick shirt out in the public these days. So I do see that he has a bigger fan base than ever, and I'm very happy for that idea to be finally understood by the general public. Yeah, as we know that when we serve our country, what we do not really serve is we don't serve under one person. We do not serve under one ideology necessarily. We're serving to protect and defend our Constitution of the United States, as we have sworn, over every time when we get promoted, when we get commissioned, is a Constitution that is the highest ordeal that we are trying to defend. And I think it's so important for people to not forget that it's not just the flag, it's not just the anthem, as you said, or a slogan. That is what we are fighting for, and to fight for this important ideal. One of the most important thing, of course, is that people are fighting for our own citizenry, the right to vote. And a lot of times when I talk to voters, I say, you don't care about voting. Many people fight or die for your right to vote. And as a matter of fact, as we see in many other countries in the world, they really are still fighting for this right day in and day out. So I think that the voting is not just a right, it's really a responsibility for every citizen. And of course, a democracy only works when the more citizenry actually turn out to vote. So I want to shift the topic to ask you for the Democratic Party. As we know, most recently, the Texas Democratic Party was trying to expand the number of people to vote by allowing more people to send in mail-in ballots. Unfortunately, the court has denied that, only allow people over 65 years old and with physical disability to receive a mail ballot. So, but we're fortunate that we're in California. I believe we're going to get the all mail-in ballot this year, correct? This November election. So maybe you could tell us more of what you're doing to help get out the vote and make sure that more citizens of California will remember register to vote for this November.
Well, I'm really reminded by a quote. I'm not sure who actually said it, but they said, if you don't vote on Tuesday, don't complain on Wednesday.
That's right.
And so in some ways, I think that's fitting. If you don't participate and you don't engage, you can't complain because you're not really participating in our democracy. That important statement only works if we have free, fair, and equitable access to the ballot. And it's remarkable that after 200 plus years in our country, we still don't have full, equal, and fair access to the vote. What you're seeing in Texas, you see attempts in Georgia, you see attempts in Kentucky, and even by Republicans in Congress that want to prevent all mail voting in this country, and at the same time seek to destroy the U.S. Postal Service because they see them as directly tied to one another. So you're absolutely right. This is a time which I am grateful to be living in California, a state that has bent over backwards to make it easier to vote, from return postage being included to
correct. It's free.
Exactly. It doesn't cost you anything to mail your ballot back, to extending the days when it can come back by 3 days, to allowing you to register on site and change your registration on site. And now every eligible registered voter in California will get mailed a ballot by their county registrar. And so every voter will have a ballot in their hand. Now, not everybody is well positioned to vote by mail. And so in-person locations are frankly just as important as the vote by mail option. For some, they've never voted by mail. For others, they're new registrants. For others, they're non-English speakers.
Right.
For others, they have disabilities. So we have to make sure that we are creating a multiple options and pathways to be able to participate. So that's
Mhm.
really what we at the party are doing, is making sure that we have a research driven strategy to not only make sure that the in-person vote is safe and communicated as such, that voters are getting the proper vote by mail materials, that we are protecting the vote before and after election day, but we're also educating voters across the board. I think education in this cycle, typically it's education about the issues. In this cycle, I think it's education about how to actually participate in this specific election. And so we at the party are focused on answering those questions, solving that riddle in this new election framework.
Great. Now, as California is a very large state, we do see that folks who are living in the rural counties certainly will be harder to show up to vote. And under COVID, the mailing is going to be so much more important. Santa Clara County, where I live, actually it's just turned to all mail-in ballot in the past cycle, just past primary. It's the first time that we have all mail-in ballots, and this is the first time now the whole state is going to all mail-in. So I think, as you said, I think it's so important to educate people, because I believe some of the polling stations might no longer be open as they used to, with the mail-in ballot being available. So getting people to change their habit is sometimes difficult, right?
But the one thing it is important, this is not an all mail
Mhm.
ballot.
Right.
Everyone will get mailed a
Mhm.
ballot, but there will be in-person voting options. The legislation that's been passed by the governor requires drop-off locations 28 days before the election, and then 4 days before the election, there have to be voting locations around the state. One for every 10,000 registered voters.
Wow.
So there will there won't be as many quote polling locations, but there certainly will be multiple voting options. And we're hoping to work with county registrars to make sure those are in locations that really make sense.
Right.
And so a lot of work is going into that effort now.
That's wonderful. That's great. And the fact that these polling locations are necessary because, as you said, people could actually walk into polling stations even as late as the date of election to then register or change their voter registration to vote. So you don't need to register. I believe previously we have to register, I think, 2 weeks before the voting day, or else they won't be able to vote. But in this case, you could actually register till the last minute, right? In that sense, not that encouraging anybody to do that. I think they should do it much earlier, right?
Absolutely. We want people to register as soon as possible, but you can walk in on election day, register to vote, and you vote provisionally, and essentially they verify the information and then get the ballot processed. So yeah, absolutely.
Right. Now, with the mail-in ballot, one of the difficult issues from time to time, people forget to sign the ballot, which is a big issue. I just want to give you the opportunity to remind people to do that, because if the ballot is not signed, they don't get counted, correct?
Yeah, you have to, I believe you have to both sign the ballot and you have to sign the envelope, right? So there's potentially two places that have to be signed. And there's a cure period, right? So there is, the counties are now required to notify a voter if in fact there isn't a signature match between what was signed and what's on the voter registration card. So you'll
Right.
have the opportunity, I think it's up to 20, 25 days or so. I think it's until December 1st to cure the signature to ensure that the ballot actually counts. And that's a really important factor, especially, in a congressional race like Congressman T.J. Cox. He was elected with 862 votes. So every signature in a race like that absolutely counts. So really important.
Yeah, as they say, every vote matters since 1776, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
The last issue I was going to talk to you about is some of the underrepresented minorities. Historically, as we have seen, many racial minorities, Latino, African American, even Asian communities have not been very strong on registering to vote or actually turning out on voting day. What other efforts are you planning to do to reach out to these groups to make sure that they are educated? And what type of language access you might want to outreach to make sure that they'll turn out to vote?
Well, certainly our coordinated 2020 coordinated campaign with infrastructure and support all across the state is actually working with local partners who are connected to historically marginalized, historically disadvantaged, underrepresented communities. We've been doing that work through in connection with the census, making sure that everyone signs up and completes a census form with a particular focus on historically hard to count communities. And so that's a great transition into our electoral strategy to be able to connect with, reach out to, and engage communities of color where language barriers, education challenges really remain a big challenge for a lot of these communities. And so our party is really through the coordinated campaign connecting with local partners that are the best messengers to these particular communities, not only to register to vote, but make sure they cast a vote on or before election day. So I'm excited because it gives us, our party, the opportunity to kind of build that capacity and that infrastructure that we've not focused on as much in the past as we really should. And so we've got the opportunity to do that in 2020.
Thank you very, very much today for your time. And I want to say thank you for your service to our Navy, to our country, and now in the different capacity as the chair of our party in the state of California Democrats. So thank you for all that you do for all of us.
I appreciate it. And thank you for your service. I'm grateful.
Thank you.